On this Tuesday night, political change and fresh faces in Alberta politics. Historic victories in the province's two largest cities.
We have made the impossible possible.
I will be with you every step of the way as we encounter the unknown.
My one-on-one with Calgary's next mayor, Jyoti Gondek. The uphill battle to keep COVID cases down, what one Saskatchewan city is now considering, plus what's being reviewed as COVID vaccines for children await approval. And open mic on Mars. Wind gusts and wheels crunching, what sounds from the red planet reveal.
Global National with Dawna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with political changes in Alberta politics that are getting noticed across the country. Voters in the province's two biggest cities have made history, electing two people of color. In Edmonton, former Liberal cabinet minister Amarjeet Sohi, who says he immigrated to Canada from India with nothing at the age of 18, has been elected mayor, taking over from Dawn Iveson. And in Calgary, former city councillor Jyoti Gondek was elected to replace Nathaniel Dove, becoming the first female mayor in Calgary's history. What changes will these new mayors usher in, and what do their wins reveal about politics in Alberta? Heather Yourex-West has our top story tonight.
It is not a marathon, but an ultra super duper marathon.
Yeah.
Inside Calgary City Hall, it's a transition among allies as outgoing Mayor Nathaniel Dove prepares to turn over the city to former councillor, now Mayor-elect Jyoti Gondek. The Progressive candidate won easily Monday night with 45% of the vote.
It will now be an honor to serve as your mayor. Wow, and support you.
Gandek is joined in Edmonton by fellow Progressive and former federal Liberal cabinet minister Amarjeet Sohi.
I'm absolutely excited to be elected to lead our city into the next chapter. There's so much good stuff going on in our city.
Am I surprised that both major cities elected progressive and progressive-ish mayors? Absolutely not.
Analyst Zane Velji says voters in Calgary and Edmonton have been supporting progressive municipal candidates for years. But this election, he believes, made a statement about the deeply unpopular provincial government as well.
Absolutely it did. I think the perspective that Jason Kenney has been on the ballot twice without actually being up for re-election is absolutely true. The federal election and now the municipal election.
The Alberta Premier tweeted his congratulations to the incoming mayors, but he's unlikely to find new allies in either city hall. Both have been highly critical of the province's COVID-19 response. Gandek is the first woman to be elected as mayor of Calgary, but she will not be alone in city chambers. After the last election, there were just 3 women on city council in Calgary and 2 in Edmonton. Now in Calgary, there are 5 women, including the mayor, and 8 women on city council in Edmonton, bringing gender parity across Alberta's biggest cities for the very first time. More historic achievements from an election that produced many.
Heather, there was also a referendum in Alberta yesterday about equalization. Voters were asked whether Canada should remove a commitment from the Constitution to redistribute wealth among the provinces. Premier Jason Kenney says Alberta pays too much. He says it's unfair, even though he was in the federal government when the equalization formula was agreed to. It's complicated. Did he get what he wanted, Heather?
Well, we won't have official results until next week because some municipalities haven't made their numbers public yet. But we do know how people in Calgary, Red Deer, Lethbridge and Medicine Hat have voted, and most have voted yes. Now, will this change anything? No, Alberta can't vote its way out of the federal equalization program, but the Premier says a strong mandate could help the province with its position, a stronger position, more leverage, if you will, as it tries to negotiate a new deal with Ottawa. Dawna?
All right, Heather Yourex-West in Calgary tonight. Thanks. Albertans also got a say on whether to move to permanent daylight saving time. The change would eliminate the need to change the clocks twice a year. Province-wide results are due on October 26. If the majority of people vote yes, the change will take effect next fall. And in Calgary, voters were also asked whether they want to reintroduce fluoride to the city's drinking water. It has long been a contentious issue in Calgary. This is the 7th time it's been on the ballot. Yesterday, a majority of Calgarians voted to bring it back, though the result is non-binding, and the new city council will make the final decision. A little later, I'll speak with the mayor-elect of Calgary about why she thinks she won and bridging divides in Alberta politics. In Saskatchewan, fewer than 300 new cases of COVID-19 are being reported for the second straight day. That decline is good news, but it hasn't affected the province's ICUs. There are 83 patients with COVID-19 in intensive care in Saskatchewan, straining the system. Patients needing critical care are now being transferred to Ontario. Pressure is growing to reimpose public health restrictions. Nathaniel Dove reports.
The fourth wave of COVID-19 hit Saskatchewan hard. On Monday, the province began transferring patients to Ontario. Infectious disease physician Dr. Alex Wong says it was inevitable.
We know informal triage is happening at the bedside, having to make hard decisions again about who gets access to, sort of resources and who does not.
After repeatedly setting daily case count records, new infections have finally started to plateau, but ICU admissions keep going up. Wong says the province needs gathering size restrictions. On Monday, Saskatchewan's chief doctor agreed.
I would certainly strongly recommend that this is the time when we think of all private gatherings in the home, keep them to a small, consistent 2 or 3 households only.
Premier Scott Moe has repeatedly said he won't impose new restrictions. City councillors in Saskatoon, the provincial hotspot, are now exploring if they can create their own.
The fact that we're the only jurisdiction that doesn't have gathering size restrictions, even Alberta does, it doesn't make sense to me.
And things can still get worse. The COVID-19 viral load in Saskatoon's wastewater doubled since last week, up 109%. A toxicologist says Thanksgiving helped the virus spread.
Hospitalizations lag a week to 2 weeks behind our numbers. So by the time people get sick, end up sick enough to be in the hospital and get diagnosed, takes some time.
Saskatchewan has finally asked for federal help. Global News asked what exactly that means in terms of new frontline staff. The government only said it takes a strategic approach when it comes to resource requests. Wong says the fact that it comes weeks after healthcare workers started calling for aid shows politics are guiding the province's pandemic response.
If there's no further action, then we're just kind of going to see how it goes. We're going to be on our own.
And facing a harsh reality that could cost more lives. Nathaniel Dove, Global News, Saskatoon.
There are lots of questions emerging about COVID-19 vaccines for children under the age of 12. Pfizer has applied to Health Canada to get them approved for use. The company says the formulation for kids is the same as it is for adults, though kids would get a lower dose. But there is lots of other information parents are still waiting for. Abigail Beeman reports.
This far into the pandemic, people are exhausted. And the planners are exhausted and the vaccinators are exhausted. And so there's not a lot of patience or tolerance for delays and uncertainty and questions.
But uncertainty and questions are exactly what people planning for pediatric vaccinations like Kelly Grindod are facing.
Late fall, we're going to be doing flu shots. We're probably going to be doing some third doses in high-risk groups and also kids' vaccines. So this is all happening at once.
Like the adult vaccine, how kids get the shot will be up to each province or public health unit.
We want to make sure it's equitable and accessible to all children. So it needs to be in child-friendly spaces.
While the federal government has a contract with Pfizer that includes pediatric shots, Ottawa is not yet saying how fast they'll arrive if and when the under-12 Pfizer vaccine gets the green light from Health Canada. The dosage for kids is 1/3 of the adult dose. The biggest question right now, can kids be given a smaller dosage of the same adult vaccine?
Drawing up pediatric doses from the existing vials is not something that is recommended at this point for a number of reasons. We also understand from Pfizer that there's the formulation has shifted.
But in a statement to Global News, Pfizer says the formulation of the vaccine itself is the same, other than the dose being administered based on the child's age. Pfizer says it's working on a different presentation, 10 doses per vial, a different label, and different color cap for kids. The Public Health Agency of Canada did not offer clarification of Dr. Tam's comments by deadline.
It does make for less precise dosing. The primary concern is, are we able to precisely give the amount of vaccine that's been studied in pediatrics to kids if we're using 1/3 of the adult dose?
Health Canada says it's making sure benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks for this age group before any approval, but isn't offering a timeline. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
The RCMP is now working with Haitian and American police to free a Canadian who's one of 17 missionaries and their families kidnapped over the weekend. The RCMP is not providing any more detail. A notorious Haitian gang is demanding a $17 million U.S. ransom, $1 million for each hostage. The missionaries were in the country with the U.S.-based nonprofit group Christian Aid Ministries. 5 children between the ages of 8 months and 15 years are among those abducted. The identity of the Canadian has not been made public. Former Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, on his way to Saudi Arabia, says he remains proud to have negotiated a $1 billion deal to sell the kingdom armored vehicles. In a statement posted on Twitter, Harper says he is also proud that this constructive relationship helped secure jobs for Canadians through the largest export manufacturing contract in Canada's history. The $15 billion deal was signed in 2014. It involved manufacturing hundreds of light armored vehicles equipped with machine guns and cannon at an Ontario plant. When Justin Trudeau was elected, he vowed he'd try to cancel the contract, but later said the cancellation fees were prohibitive. Human rights groups have long opposed the sale because of Saudi Arabia's poor human rights record and warn it could use the weapons against civilians. Harper, who now runs a consulting business, will visit Saudi Arabia almost 3 years to the day after Saudi agents murdered Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. COVID cases climb in the UK. Coming up, what's fueling the spike and why things could get worse. Plus, have pot will travel, one couple's non-traditional way to get to their wedding. In Texas, a close call on a runway. This small plane with 21 people on board was attempting to take off, but hit a fence, rolled off the runway, and erupted in flames. Everyone on board did manage to escape safely. Only 2 people reported minor injuries. There is pressure from some public health doctors in the UK to reimpose restrictions because cases of COVID-19 are on the rise again. There have been an average of 43,000 new cases each day for the last week, the highest since restrictions were lifted in July. Hospitalizations and deaths are also rising, though they are nowhere near the level at the start of the pandemic. Britain was the first Western country to roll out vaccines, but that early success could be part of the troubles today. Redmond Shannon explains.
4, 3, 2, 1. It's been exactly 3 months since England left behind its last level of lockdown. No more vaccine passports, social distancing, or mask mandates. As expected, infections rose, but with a largely vaccinated population, serious cases and deaths stayed low. But now they're surging again.
A lot of the usual symptoms and some of the odd ones which I wasn't expecting.
Canadian infectious disease expert Roland Keogh is among the increasing numbers of people in isolation with COVID-19 here. He says the UK's early vaccine success is partly why infections are now rising again.
So the waning of vaccines is something we have always expected. Okay, this is what happens with any immune response. You do not keep it up forever. All right. The question was how long it was, and the evidence over the past few months is that it does decline, and a substantial number of people have reduced protection after about 6 months.
Diminishing effectiveness will also depend on the type of vaccine. The UK is rolling out booster shots to the vulnerable and healthcare workers. Evidence from Israel suggests that will re-flatten the curve, but Britain only recently started vaccinating under 18s, and that could be a problem.
At the moment, the epidemic is still being driven in the UK by teenagers and younger adults.
It's clear that the vaccination programme in 12 to 15-year-olds is not going very well. The worry is that autumn-winter is going to get very, very messy.
The British government says it is keeping a close eye on the so-called Delta Plus variant, which experts say is slightly more transmissible and resilient. It says if the pressure on the National Health Service becomes too much this winter, then vaccine passports and masks may return. Dawna?
All right, Redmond Shannon in London, thank you. A couple in southern India didn't let flash flooding ruin their wedding day. They found a way to adapt. The bride and groom sailed to the ceremony sitting in this big metal cooking pot. They floated to the temple through muddy water, two men steering the way. Some members of the family apparently swam. Others used another pot to get there. The couple dry and hopefully living happily ever after. Meet Calgary's new mayor ahead, a one-on-one with Jyoti Gondek about her historic election win. Calgary made headlines in 2010 when it elected the first Muslim mayor of a major North American city, and now it's done it again, electing the first female mayor in the city's history. Jyoti Gondek is of Punjabi heritage, and so is the new mayor of Edmonton, Amarjeet Sohi. If this doesn't finally obliterate national stereotypes of Alberta as some kind of racist backwater, writes Calgary Herald columnist Don Braid, perhaps nothing ever will. Well, with me from Calgary is Jyoti Gondek, mayor-elect. First, let me say congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
Can you reflect a bit on your victory? What was it, do you think, about you and your campaign that appealed to Calgarians?
Well, I think we offered people something to vote for. My campaign team and I have been very clear from the beginning that there must be a vision that's communicated to Calgarians, and I think the people of Calgary embraced it. They wanted to hear more about what we would do for resiliency in this city, and they demonstrated that they liked what they heard by coming out to vote.
You have a PhD in urban sociology, I've read. You've worked as an academic. Why did you decide to make the leap to public office and run for mayor? Did something happen that made you say, this is it, I'm running?
You know, it's been an interesting journey falling in love with this concept of city building. It started many years ago when I picked up a couple of projects my dad had left unfinished when he passed away, quite unfortunately, in 2003. And as I dug in to do some of that work with his friends and colleagues, I realized that there was a calling for me in public service, and I did a lot of volunteer roles in and around the city and my communities. And in 2017, I looked back at what I had been trying to do to influence from the outside, and I thought maybe it was time to get a seat at the table. I felt well prepared at that time, and now with 4 years of council under my belt, I feel incredibly well prepared to serve Calgarians as their mayor.
I know Premier Jason Kenney has congratulated you. Are you ideologically aligned in any way? And what sort of relationship do you hope to have with him?
I think the greatest alignment that our city and the provincial government could have is one where we realize that we all serve the same people. So if we can count on their assistance in providing the supports that people need with public health, with childcare, access to housing, then we can help be that economic engine again that carries us forward.
You know, I talked to Nathaniel last month about the toxic political atmosphere these days, how hostile and vicious some people can be. How much does that concern you, and how do you think you'll push back against it?
It is quite concerning, and I think a lot of people who ran as candidates for the first time in this election realized just how ugly it can be. But I have a lot of faith that we have a brighter future ahead. I think people are incredibly optimistic about it, and I think people have realized that we need to band together to make sure we're stamping out the voices that try to be louder than ours.
All right, Jyoti Gondek, Mayor-elect of Calgary, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Up next, rumblings from the Red Planet. What those sounds mean for exploration on Mars. A remarkable find off the coast of Israel. A diver on a weekend treasure hunt discovered this, a sword experts believe is roughly 900 years old, dating back to the Crusades. It's about 1 meter long and was exposed when sands shifted in the shallow water of a cove known for sheltering ships. The sword, believed to be made of iron, will be x-rayed and cleaned, and maybe reveal clues about the crusader who once carried it. From an eye on the distant past to an ear on the distant present, the first photograph ever taken on the surface of Mars was beamed back to Earth 45 years ago, and now sounds from the red planet, captured by NASA's Perseverance rover, are giving scientists a deeper understanding of what it's like to roam around up there. Mike Drolet explains.
If your car made a racket like this, you'd get it checked out. But NASA named its Mars rover Perseverance, not Rolls-Royce. So all that clanking and scratching, they could care less.
Yeah, it's not engineered for, comfort. So there's definitely sounds of, moving up and down. It's got a lot of metal, so there's going to be creaking and groaning a little bit.
NASA has now had a few months to study the hours of sounds first recorded by the rover, the first audio ever captured on another planet. It's not as sexy as the lander's descent or the subsequent drone flight, but hearing the winds of Mars adds to our sensory feel of another world.
It doesn't really tie into the search for life or anything like that, but it tells us that there were things that we had predicted about the atmosphere that we didn't quite get right.
NASA scientists knew the Martian atmosphere was thin, so they expected high-pitched sounds would either disappear or appear muffled. For example, this is what birds sound like on Earth. And to be clear, they haven't found birds on Mars, but if they did, this is what you'd hear. What surprised them was how far sound travels on the red planet. The Mars helicopter was 80 meters away. Yet the rover's microphones were still able to pick it up, proving science doesn't just look cool.
With all of our upcoming missions to, Jupiter's moons, different planets around the solar system, I think it would be a nice, soundtrack, sounds of the solar system.
And here I thought we already had that.
There's a starman waiting in the sky.
Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Dawna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is near the village of Pakenham, Ontario, west of Ottawa. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.